Call the Grand Forks County Commission meeting to order, February 7th, 2023. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody close your eyes. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Everybody get a chance to look at the minutes from the previous meeting. Do I have a motion to approve? So moved by Commissioner Hagan, second. Commissioner Rusted. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Approval of the order of agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
we had a request to make one small change in the order. So I would move that item 7, public health, be prior to item 6, the correctional center expansion.
okay. All right. Have a motion to do that. Do I have a motion to do that? He made the motion, second, by Mr. Commissioner Rusted. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
carried. All right. Okay, approval of the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I would move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Engen seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right. Who's health?
Ross, members of the commission, I'm Javen Bedard, the environmental health manager with Grand Forks Public Health. As you all are well aware, our esteemed leader of many years, Debbie Swanson, has retired. At the last night's city council meeting, they did approve the contract for her replacement, which will be Tess Moeller, starting on March 6th. We have in our office, we are providing coverage amongst 3 different people. You'll see Allie at the department head meetings here, and certainly we're there, ready to serve as is needed. So feel free to reach out to us for whatever your needs are. Any questions you may have as I'm able, or get back to you.
Okay. Any questions from any commissioners?
I left right before we had talked about that. When is it test?
Yes.
When did she start?
6. Yep. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. All right, correctional center expansion, juvenile detention center project.
Commissioner Ross, members of the commission, I was asked to come to you today and provide some information regarding the correctional center. You do have a packet in a black envelope there that has my full presentation, as well as the schematics of the existing correctional facility and the proposed expansion. This is information for you to take with you and such, but I wanted to provide that for you because this whole presentation's information. While I'm not aware of any inaccurate data or information within this presentation, any misrepresentation of data or information that I present would be completely unintended. Grand Forks County Correctional Center is located next to the fairgrounds, directly off of North Washington Street, and there's a picture of it on your monitor. Today, I will attempt to answer questions regarding the existing correction center and the proposed expansion. As the vast majority of Grand Forks County citizens do not interact with or become inmates of the correctional center, therefore they don't have a thorough understanding of the operations, legal liabilities, constitutional requirements, jail standards, and simple day-to-day operations of a facility such as this. From this lack of understanding or information, many have raised questions. It is my hope that throughout this presentation, I will be able to answer most, if not all, of the questions that have been raised, such as the correctional center's population, its capacity. Why is the population growing as it is? Federal inmates, non-federal inmates, who are we holding? Is the state paying for inmates that we're holding here? What about COVID? How does that affect the correctional center? Why expanding when the correctional facility is only 16 years old? Why wasn't this growth anticipated? And lastly, will the proposed expansion resolve our needs? First, let's look at the current facility. The groundbreaking ceremony on the existing facility was on August 16th, 2005, with a dedication ceremony September 23rd, 2006. Total construction was approximately $16 million. This provided an expansion from an existing facility of 86 beds to 248. The new facility was built on a modular design for general housing, in addition to incorporating 2 dormitory style housing units, as well as a 10-cell temporary holding area. Here's a floor plan of the current facility, and I had all the housing units colored for you. The green you see is a pod that holds our women. It's 6 units, 8 beds in 4 units, and 7 beds in 2 units because they have ADA cells, a total of 46 beds. The blue are the men's pods, 6 units in each pod. The middle unit, the same as the women's, with 46 beds. And the one on the right is a 2-story unit, thereby doubling the number of beds in that unit. The purple you see in 2 different locations are men's dormitory spaces. The larger one in the middle being the old work release area, and the smaller one towards the upper right is where we house our inmate workers who assist in the kitchen and perform laundry services for the correctional facility. The yellow down towards the bottom are the 10 temporary holding cells, 2 beds in each of those cells. The red, which is just beneath that, are padded cells. There are 2 padded cells in the entire facility. And these are used for the inmates that are in need and to protect themselves, protect from hurting themselves. The Grand Forks County Correctional Center was constructed with 248 beds, 22 of them which cannot be used for general population, the 2 padded cells and the 20 beds in the 10 temporary holding cells. So starting at 248, we must subtract all beds that cannot be utilized temporarily, 22, as these beds do not meet the standards for long-term housing. These 22 beds do not provide access to day rooms, recreation, phones, showers, which are found and required in our general population housing. This means we have a total of 226 beds, which we can use for general housing under ideal conditions. 46 of them, the green pod, for women, 180 for men. So this means we can readily accommodate 226 inmates, right? Wrong. This is just where we start. It's a starting point. We need to consider all things that make housing this number of inmates impractical, as every bed cannot typically be utilized. What do I mean by that? Why can't every bed be utilized? There's many reasons. Gender, males, females must be separated, and each gender has a specific housing unit with a finite number of beds in each. Having bed space available in the men's unit, for example, does us no good for an overpopulated female unit. Those beds cannot be utilized. Criminal separation, co-conspirators. To ensure that co-conspirators aren't able to fabricate alibis and such, we can't house them together. Sex offenders. These offenders are typically targets of assault. For this reason, we will typically use 1 unit specifically for these offenders. If we use an 8-bed unit and have 6 sex offenders, I have 2 beds that can't be used. If I have 10 sex offenders, I'm going to have 6 beds that can't be used. Sentence, pre-sentence. Jail standards dictate that these populations must be separate unless there is an approved classification system, which we have achieved with the department, so we can house those populations together. Medical, contagious disease, TB, infirmary, whether it's COVID, the flu, TB, or some other medical condition requiring isolation, we must isolate these individuals for everyone's safety, inmates and staff. Since all cells are 2 beds, many beds become unavailable, and we need to do this. A good example, typically every year we will have an inmate or inmates diagnosed with TB. When this happens, we are required to house them in a negative air pressure cell. When I came to the correction center, we had none of these cells existed. But we were able to remodel, and we now have 2 housing units to accommodate for this. In a worst case scenario, if you can imagine, 1 female with TB, 1 male with TB. I can't house them together. They got to be in separate units. 2 individuals taking up 16 beds. 14 beds in that scenario cannot be utilized. Mental health, behavioral health issues. The American Psychological Association reports that 64% of jail inmates have reported mental health concerns. Google this subject matter and you'll find thousands of articles on this subject. Corrections facilities across the nation have become the new mental health wards of the states. Many of these individuals cannot be housed with others, and when that occurs, I lose more beds. Suicidal. Again, closely tied to mental health, suicidal individuals are an extreme concern. In America's jails, suicide is the leading cause of death. The rate of suicide is nearly 3 times higher in jails than in prisons or to the general public. Estimates show that there are 8 suicide attempts for every fatal suicide within a correctional facility. In the last quarter of 2022, Grand Forks County Correctional Center had 19 suicide watches put into place. All things equal, that would equate to nearly 80 watches in a given year. Keep aparts, fighting inside, outside the facility. In 2022, we had 66 inmate on inmate assaults in the facility. The other day while I was preparing this, 5 inmates attacked another inmate. Now we have 6 inmates that can no longer be housed together. Another example, a female I had a year and a half, 2 years ago, had 27 keep aparts. 27 individuals she could not be housed with. She had to remain in a lockdown status for a month and a half because there was no physical combination of people that we could move around to get her out of her cell. I lost 1 bed for a month and a half because of that. Discipline. Inmates on discipline segregation many times need to be isolated. In the construction of the current correctional center, there is no disciplinary segregation units. This means for any inmate on disciplinary segregation, we will lose 1 bed for each one, an average of 3 to 5 on any given day. Administrative segregation. Some inmates must be separated from the general population for either their safety or other safety. Again, no administrative segregation units were put in this facility. Currently, we have 3 inmates on administrative segregation in an 8-bed unit, a loss of 5 more beds. Another way to think of it, this is a picture of a restaurant. Imagine this is your favorite restaurant and you and your significant other are out for a romantic dinner. You get to your restaurant and you ask for a table for 2. The restaurant is busy, as you can see. All tables for 2 are full. Assume that the lady standing is going to sit at that table right next to her. The server tells you that you have to wait for a table as they are currently full. But you see that there's a table for 6 way in the back left. But this is unavailable to you because it's reserved for larger groups. So you wait. Most people, though, would object to being seated with another couple because that could be a possibility, or being split up. Maybe you and your significant other sit at different tables. That's a possibility. In reality, when you look at this picture, there are many seats available, even though you're required to sit or stand and wait. I count 6 in the back left, 2 in the back right, 1 with the lady standing, 4 in the upper right, 2 in the bottom right. A total of 15 seats are open. So in this example, 11 people are occupying the space designed for 20, excluding the table for 6 in the back left. They are under 50% occupancy for the entire restaurant, but you are required to wait for a table. If this pattern were to happen 4 times over the course of the evening, the restaurant would be serving 20 minus 11, 9 times 4 times, 36 less people than it could have served had it been the way it needed to be. This would not be good for business, and the owner would need to look at whether the table configuration is correct, as multiple two-person tables appear to be a much better solution than having 3 or 4 larger tables occupied by 2 people. This type of scenario directly correlates with a correctional facility, not in tables, but in beds. There are many times you simply cannot use 100% of the available tables or beds in a correctional facility. So when the question is asked as to what is the capacity of the Grand Forks County Correctional Center, all the factors I previously mentioned, male, female, medical offense, and segregation, all these things need to be considered. It is from this consideration that functional capacity is defined. Functional capacity referring to 80% of rated capacity, allowing for the safe operations of the facility, as well as providing the necessary separation of inmates. So calculating the functional capacity of the Grand Forks County Correctional Center, we would multiply the 226 available beds by 80%, and that's where we come up with 180 beds. But it still isn't that simple. As for the factors previously mentioned, still need to be considered. For example, pod 1, that was our green pod, which serves our female population, has a total capacity of 46 inmates. Functional capacity then would be 37. Yet on one day last week, we had 62 females in custody. It's possible to be over functional capacity and have under 180 inmates in the facility. 65 females, for example, and 113 males would be exactly that. So, as to the correctional center's population, let's dig a little deeper into this subject. Before we get too deep, though, in the numbers, we need to have some general understandings. We've been operating the correctional center under what is called a business model approach. Under this approach, we sell available beds to other agencies for a per diem, a fee. We have contracted with 15 different agencies of which to provide this service. Most contracts are $75 a day, but recent negotiations with the feds have raised this rate 33% to $100 a day, effective January 1st of this year. We will be looking to update other contracts throughout the year. This business model approach has brought millions of dollars to Grand Forks County over the years, but the growth of the Grand Forks County inmates population continues to gnaw at our ability to sell beds. Let's look at what these per diems have brought to Grand Forks County. This graph shows the annual revenue we have been able to generate on per diems of individuals we hold for the feds, the city, the Department of Corrections, and other counties. When including all ancillary revenue Grand Forks County receives from these inmates, we have averaged just over $2 million a year for the 10 years prior to 2018. Without additional beds to sell, this number continues to fall. Notice the trend since 2016 and the drastic dip in 2022, all reflective of our ability to hold inmates other than our own.
Are those gross figures?
Of the revenue?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes. This graph you're seeing right now is a cumulative per diem by these inmates. This model of operation has produced over $24 million in per diems since I've been here, with closer to 28 million when including commissions earned from these inmates, commissary, phones, texting, video visitation, and such. In order to continue this business model and bring in millions of dollars to Grand Forks County, we need beds to sell. This number is quickly diminishing, and without an expansion, it will diminish. So what kind of numbers are we experiencing? Many times, if you talk to me or you talk to someone in this line of work, they talk about an average daily population. When we talk about average daily population, or ADP, this is simply referencing the average number of inmates incarcerated at a given time. The average daily population of the Grand Forks County Correctional Center has increased 30% over the past 15 years. Compare that to Grand Forks County, which has seen an increase of only 9.6%. The ADP of a correctional center has increased 3 times as much as the county population. What this tells us is that one cannot correlate correctional center bed space needs simply on the growth of the county. There is not a 1-to-1 ratio. Looking at our ADP, you can see that whereas the average in 2007 was approximately 160 inmates per day, except for our COVID years, we've been averaging 205 to 211 per day for the last 5 years. Remember, functional capacity is 180. We began equaling or exceeding this number since 2012. It's been over 10 years now. So one of the questions is, well, how many of these inmates that make up these numbers are Grand Forks County inmates? Let's look at that. As you can see by this, the average daily population, the ADP of Grand Forks County inmates have been below the functional capacity all the time, with the exception so far of 2023. It is because of this, though, that we've been able to sell bed space to other agencies. As you can see by this graph, we are quickly closing this opportunity with our rapid growth. While this and the last slide deal with average populations, what is equally important is our ability to provide safe, secure housing every day of every year. And for this, we need to consider the extremes we experience. Here are the population extremes experienced each year beginning in 2013. As you can see, every year we have exceeded our functional capacity, and those numbers in red exceed maximum capacity of general population beds, 226, which remember was only with an ideal population, meaning that we can use all the beds available to us. So, based on our past, what does our future look like for our expected population? This is a graph that shows data as of through to February 28, 2020, and projects into the future. It stops at this date because in March 2020, COVID hit the nation. By the trend we had experienced prior to COVID, we would anticipate an average daily population of 230 inmates in 2024, next year. But COVID did hit, and populations fell drastically because of measures were enacted to reduce the overcrowding in facilities everywhere. But as COVID has become less prevalent and a concern of many, numbers quickly have rebounded. January of this year, 6 days equaled or exceeded this projected 230, with highs of 236 on 2 different days. We're already there. Here's a graphical representation of our ADP when COVID is considered. And even with the 3-year dip, the trend continues to be upward at a large rate. One of the things that I've talked about is males, females. So let's look at our female population because that's a grave concern of mine. Remember, one of the factors must be considered in housing separation is gender. Males, females require completely different housing units. Having beds available in one unit for the opposite gender does us no good. Concerning has been the steady rise in the number of females that the correctional center holds. I started tracking this statistic 10 years ago in 2013, when I noticed what appeared to be an increase in this population, and due to separate housing needs, an extremely vital statistic to watch. As you can see by this graph, since 2017, the last 6 years in counting, the female population has been at or exceeded functional capacity and is quickly equaling and frequently surpassing maximum capacity of 46. Having occurred every year since 2014, and the extremes are getting higher and higher. Those little red dots on the top of that graph show you what we are experiencing on a given day in those given years. So whereas in 2013, the most we ever had, females we ever had to deal with on a given day was 44, already in 2023, we've had 62. So who are we holding these inmates for? It's sometimes the question is, do we need to hold these people that aren't Grand Forks County? Well, this chart shows you by jurisdiction who we're holding for. I've highlighted those columns that I believe are of interest. Yellow, Grand Forks County. The continual growth of inmates from 129 in 2007 to between 153 and 160 the last 4 years, excluding COVID. The green numbers you see are federal inmates. We marketed that group of people, and it grew all the way up to 2016, where we had over 61 individuals per day paying to be in the correctional center. But what you notice there is in 2022, that's fallen to 19.95. A steadily decrease ever since 2016 as the Grand Forks County population continues to rise. And then blue is our COVID years, a reduction in county held inmates, but a sharp increase in the Department of Correction inmates. We were required to hold when they wouldn't take them. If you don't know, the Department of Corrections closed its doors during COVID, and we were holding them for an extended period of time. So why is this population growing? As the population of the county continues to increase, you can expect that proportionally the correctional center population would increase. But there's more. New laws, for example. Every biennium, new laws go on the books, and rarely do they decriminalize an activity, but rather add to it. DUI threshold, for example, 24/7 program, mandatory sentences, just to name a few. In addition, some new laws will actually reduce sanctions, thus causing an individual who would have previously been sentenced to the state due to the length of their sentence, now is spending all their time locally in county facilities. And lastly, legislation that actually requires counties to hold inmates sentenced to the state. And by that, I'm referring to the Department of Corrections prioritization plan. We have taken advantage of business opportunity and have become a resource for many other agencies holding their inmates and saving Grand Forks County taxpayers millions of dollars. So if the population of the Grand Forks County Correctional Center is going up, what do the bookings look like? What does this tell us? This is an interesting statistic that needs to be looked at too. This chart shows the number of annual bookings into the Grand Forks County Correctional Center and brings to light an interesting fact. As you can see, prior to COVID, we averaged over 5,000 bookings per year. If one was to compare 2022, the year that we just completed, with years that are similar with average daily population, you would expect that the number of bookings would likely be the same, everything else being equal. Well, if you look at 2008 through 2010, the three bars way on the left, they averaged 5,200 bookings, and the average daily population at that time was 174. If we look at 2020 to 2022, 3,300 bookings, average daily population, 178. Not significantly different, yet the bookings are substantially different. What does this mean? Simply, it means the number of individuals being booked into the Grand Forks County Correctional Center are staying for a longer period of time. Why would that be? There are again a number of factors that can cause this. Laws have changed whereby we are not holding individuals for lesser charges anymore. Laws can be changed where individuals who previously may have been sent to the penitentiary are now being held locally. We have few short-term immigration holds now in the correction center. And the influx of individuals committing more serious crimes can cause this. The courts can be full. Dates for court are being pushed out later and later due to the volume the court is having to deal with. Caseloads overloads for either prosecution or defense. Any or all of these factors can make a difference, and it's likely that every one of them is contributing in some part to the fact that their individuals are staying longer. Also, as it pertains to booking, this chart shows the number of inmates booked on an average day of each month. As you can see, the average about 12.5 to 13 for every month except December. Also to note from this graph are the uptick periods. As you can see, we build in the number of bookings in the winter, spring, January, February, March, you can see it rise, as well as in the fall, July, August, September. Having just closed January 2023 with an average daily population of almost 205, with 57 of them being women, is not a good sign for the coming months. It's alarming. People have talked and asked questions. COVID. So what has the COVID effect been on the correctional center? we have a legal obligation to provide a safe, secure environment for inmates, as well as a safe working environment for staff. Correctional facilities, like homeless shelters, have more stringent COVID mitigation recommendations due to the health of the individuals they serve, as well as the potential consequences of an outbreak within the walls. There would be a potential legal liability to disregard recommendations without cause. COVID protocols today in no way resemble those of nearly 2 years ago. But if we have the ability to keep newly incarcerated individuals away from our existing general population, it makes logical sense to do this to the best of our abilities. And while recent numbers have not supported this, we're going to do the best we can to keep them separate. Over the course of the past 2 years, COVID has dramatically affected the correction center and the population we serve. 61 officers have tested positive, 10 as close contacts, and subsequently have missed work, totaling 550 days of availability. 100+ inmates have tested positive, requiring over 1,000 days of isolation and quarantine. When we're isolating, when we're quarantined, we have a number of beds that again cannot be used. What you're seeing in front of you right now are direct quotes from the current CDC guidelines dated November 29th of 22 for correctional facilities. So while for many others, COVID protocols have been nearly eliminated, they still exist for correctional facilities, and we will take steps and precautions to reduce the transmission of COVID throughout the facility for the safety of inmates and staff and reduce any potential liability upon the county. I currently have 2 staff members out after testing positive for COVID right now. Hopefully returning that this week. When a staff member does test positive, this is always a great concern for me, as if it were to spread throughout my staff, we would have an impossible task of manning that facility. Another question that's come up: is the state reimbursing Grand Forks County for inmates? We need the context of this question in order to answer the question, and I will attempt to do that. We have had a contract with the state for many years to hold their inmates when asked. In 2017, legislation was passed which would essentially allow the Department of Corrections to close its doors if their population ever exceeded maximum operational capacity. It wasn't until 2019 that this was implemented, and when it was for females. And for the first time, counties attempted, after it was implemented, for the first time, counties attempted to get reimbursed. We received a letter with a message I've highlighted, and as you can see by this, the Department of Corrections was not taking responsibility for the inmates. All expenses associated with a female inmate, the Department of Corrections is not able to accept because it cannot exceed its maximum operational capacity, and authorized legislative appropriations will be the responsibility of the county correctional center or regional correctional center housing the inmate. Stephen Hall, Department of Corrections, email 59 of 2019. If my memory serves me correctly, this affected Grand Forks County with 2 female inmates only. But seeing this and working with the North Dakota Association of Counties, additional language was added to that same statute that allowed the department to close their doors, and added subsection 3. And in subsection 3, what was added is again highlighted on your screen is important. That an agreement under this section must include a minimum daily rate per inmate, including medical costs, to be paid by the department to the governing body of the jail or correctional facility, beginning the day after the department receives notice from the district court. And I've highlighted all the way through the district court because that's going to make some more sense in the slide coming up. So now with this new legislation, should the Department of Corrections go back into their prioritization plan? Yes, counties will be reimbursed. I call this upon the gavel when this language is there. So is the state reimbursing Grand Forks County? When in the prioritization plan? Yes, upon the gavel they are. The gavel goes down, they get notified, and the state's taking responsibility. When the department calls us and requests, will we hold someone? Yes, we get reimbursed. So is there ever a time we don't get reimbursed? And I think this might be where some of the confusion is. I believe there's confusion because of the context of which this question can be asked. When an inmate is sentenced by district court to the Department of Corrections and all county charges have been cleared, the inmate can then be approved and scheduled to be transferred to the Department of Corrections. From time of gavel to transport, all costs continue to be that of the county. The Department of Corrections will not accept responsibility until the individual is delivered to their door and admitted. This is different than if they're in the prioritization plan. You see the but there. But if the Department of Corrections is under the prioritization plan, it says it to be paid by the department to the governing body of the jail or corrections center beginning the day after the department receives notice from the district court. So in the context of that question, we need to know the answer of who we're talking about, whether or not it's going to be a yay or nay that they will pay for it. For good reason, the Department of Corrections does not want to accept financial responsibility for an individual that they have yet to admit. But on the other hand, the county does not want to accept financial responsibility for an individual cleared of county charges and sentenced to the Department of Corrections. As the furthest metro area from the penitentiary, Grand Forks County is at a disadvantage when it comes to transporting inmates to the state pen compared to other metro counties. Whereas it takes a full day of 2 officers to make a transport from Grand Forks County. Compare that to Burley, for example, which is just a few miles from the pen and could essentially be there and back within the hour. Staffing and efficiencies of transports in conjunction with availability of admission dates controlled by the Department of Corrections become factors in the length of time we experience from gavel to transport. We are working on solutions to enhance our ability to shorten the gavel to transport time, thereby opening up beds sooner. This is a question that has been asked. What wasn't properly planned for, causing a need for an expansion when the facility is just 16 years old? Correctional facilities are unlike other county buildings. We are not open 50 hours a week. We are open 168. We house a population that is more destructive to the building than anyone else. We don't have downtimes. We don't close for weekends, allowing equipment to have a break. All our equipment operates 100% all the time. This type of work means all equipment's lifespan is much shorter than a building's operating for 1/3 of the time. The wear and tear factor would be similar to another county building 4 times its age. Construction of a correctional facility is likely the most expensive construction per square foot of any building the county will build. Regulations, standards, as well as a form of construction with secure doors, windows, concrete walls, security cameras, and many more adding to the cost. Because of the high cost of construction, a county rarely builds everything based on anticipated needs. I can tell you from experience in other builds that I've been involved in, that the dollars available will always have an effect on the end product. As funds aren't unlimited, the building projects many times are scaled back to better reflect available funds than truly and fully anticipated needs. What is being considered for an expansion to the correction center is not an end product, but rather a step in the right direction for some badly needed bed space. Even the existing consideration has 2 phases of construction, of which one is currently off the table due to funding. A jail assessment completed in 2017 shows a need for many more beds than what is being considered, as well as some specific types of beds. But without funding, we can only attempt to do what is within our means. At some point in the future, I anticipate that this will again be a discussion item, building, as I continually see the Grand Forks County inmate population grow every year. An expansion is not a new idea. The recognized need for an expansion goes way back to 2011. Here's a copy of the capital project form I completed in 2011 showing the need for an expansion. And I have included it every year since. As I alluded to earlier, on May 4th of 2018, a jail needs assessment was presented to the commission and recommends an expansion of 130 to 135 beds, which included 2 new pods, an enhanced medical and mental health housing unit, and an infirmary. Many North Dakota counties have had to deal with their increased jail correctional center populations. A quick search finds these 6 counties, all with builds or expansions, totaling 1,302 beds being built and millions of dollars spent. The proposed Grand Forks expansion, when excluding the juvenile detention center, would be the smallest of these in both size and cost, with the exception of Barnes County, which is Valley City area. So what's in the proposed expansion, what's not? Current expansion would include 8 dormitory beds and 8 units for a total of 64 beds. By dividing this dormitory space into smaller units of 8, we can separate our population in smaller numbers and allow us to separate with their people parts as needed. The medical unit we currently have is severely undersized for our current existing population and badly in need of additional space. As this space needs to stay within the secure perimeter and should be centrally located, the cheapest and best option is going to be to relocate the medical department into the middle of the facility where the administrative offices, break room, locker room, and training room are located. Relocate the administrative offices, locker room, break room, training room outside the secure perimeter where construction costs are much cheaper. So you'd see those in the detail of a build. Additional pod 4. The initial construction of a 64-bed dormitory pod will be constructed such that when it is possible to build phase 2, another 64 beds, we'll be able to enclose the entire area as a single pod and maximize resources and staff efficiencies. While adding an additional 64 beds will help with current housing needs, it is not an end solution, as I've said before. Using the functional capacity factor of 80%, this build will add 51 beds, bringing our new functional capacity from 180 to 231. In January of this year, we already exceeded that number 4 times. We are to continue with a business model and sell beds to reduce the tax burden on the county taxpayers. We will likely need to construct phase 2 sooner than later. Final comments. While building or expanding the correctional facility doesn't catch the eye of the public as it's not flashy or pretty to do with their tax dollars, not having a facility or having an inferior facility for the needed population or being closed due to the inability to safely house inmates are much worse scenarios for the public. We have a legal obligation to the taxpayers that our law enforcement serves and protects to have a facility available to hold those individuals the public has deemed in need of incarceration. If the Grand Forks County Correctional Center isn't available because it's full, shut down, or incapable, there is not a facility in the state currently capable of holding our population. If there were, the cost would far exceed our current costs. The revenue from selling beds to others far exceeds the cost and helps to reduce the total cost of corrections on the county and the taxpayers. To lose this ability by not building or building too little will cost the county millions of dollars over time. Canceling contracts and only holding Grand Forks County inmates will negatively affect the taxpayers of Grand Forks County in addition to the tax burden, in additional tax burdens. An expansion of the correctional center makes logical and financial business sense for the entire county. I'm just hopeful we're not too late. As I've had to push federal inmates away, they've had to find other places to hold them. Bringing and getting them back is going to be a challenge, but I'm up to it. I apologize for the lengthiness of this presentation, but as I said in the beginning, the answers to the frequently heard questions are all too often not simple responses. Any questions? Yes, sir.
So this is a good presentation. A lot of it is like verified because I went ahead and found it all out. This isn't exactly how it was sold to us at that meeting right before Christmas. And maybe it was just lack of details in front of you or whatever, but it was definitely sold a little differently than this, as I've listened back to it on multiple occasions. But we'll put that to the side. That's neither here nor there, because now we're kind of looking at facts that you put forward. And so you said that the federal is paying about 75 per head per day, but they're jumping that to 100, correct?
Yes, sir.
So that, but you said when I asked, that was a gross figure, and I guess I'd be more interested in knowing, once you consider the burden rate for the staff, the food they eat, the utilities that they absorb, and the fact that they do, what did you say, 4 to 5 times as much wear and tear on the building, inmates in general, not federal inmates, but inmates in general, whether that's truly a net positive, because gross figures, I mean, you can, in my world, you could go buy an apartment building that brings in 20,000 a month gross, but if your costs are $25,000 a month, you're really not ahead, and so I guess I'd be more interested in a net figure, because I'm apprehensive about a $38 million per, expansion, which in fairness includes also the juvenile piece. So, but when we're talking about 75, soon to be $100 a day gross income per head, that doesn't, not a lot of empires were built on $100 a day, put it that way.
Commissioner Rusted, you bring up an excellent point, and one that I wouldn't say that it's never crossed my mind. For this to make financial sense, it has to have a positive on Grand Forks County. Losing 40, 50 paying customers per day has not changed my staffing ratio whatsoever. Staffing of a correctional facility is the most expensive part there is. Efficiencies of staffing have to be always considered in layouts of design, and that's why when we look at the new facility, it's made such that when we get to phase 2, we're adding one more post and only one more post. When we're talking about the individuals and I call it consumables, because that's where those extra 40, 50 need. They need hot water, they need food, we're going to get the medical costs paid for them by the individuals that are contracting with us, and they need their hygiene stuff, and we need to launder their stuff. I can feed them for probably $6 to $7 a day, somewhere in there. Probably a little higher now that we're seeing all their food costs go up. Let's call it 8. Their hygiene stuff is probably costing the county $1 a week, $1.50 a week. It isn't much. Laundry services means we're going to launder this 40 more pieces of their linens and their clothing weekly, but it's not substantial. It's 2 loads of laundry in our large washer and dryers, if that. When you look at that, I would say our net is going, you could subtract maybe $15, and the rest is net, because the biggest bulk of everything is operations. It doesn't change our heat in the facility, doesn't change my staffing, doesn't change the wear and tear that they do is no different than the Grand Forks County ones. So we're going to get it one way or another. But if you ask me to estimate what the net would be, I'd say subtract probably $15 a day.
I think that's fair. I mean, it is a factor, because when you stretch it out
Absolutely.
and called it millions, I mean, this takes a hunk out of it,
Mhm.
That's over, well, you owe it 20% of the daily income. Go right to needs. So is it also, so you, if you dropped, what do you say, 40 to 50 federal inmates, that wouldn't change your staffing needs at all?
No, the state will dictate in the different, if you would go way back to housing, which would be on your charts, it's gonna be where you see the green and blues and stuff. The green and blue, manned by one individual, with a secondary individual that roams between them. It doesn't matter. You know what? Slide number that is.
Isn't that what you're looking at? Or
Right
you're
there.
looking at the
What
map?
slide do we got?
Oh, the map.
Five. Okay, slide 5. The green and on the left, the blue in the middle. That's one staff person in each. Regardless if they're full or there's 12 people in it. I have one staff member that rotates between them too, because we cannot go into a secure housing unit without a second officer. The blue on the right has 2 staff members in it anytime they're not in a lockdown situation. So if we have 96 people in there or we have 76, we still have 2 staff members in there because you cannot supervise that population with one person whatsoever. And everyone else is supervised by pretty much roaming officers. The booking area, the green or the yellows and the red area. That's where we got people stationed and every time law enforcement comes in, has to process people in, process people out, and take care of the 20 to 25 people that are held there temporarily. We cannot reduce the staffing there either. The staffing, when you look way back to 2007 to today, I don't believe we've added any officers. So while our population's gone up 30%, it's falling on the officers completely. The existing officers, I should say. I know this was a lot of information, and I'm hopeful you have more questions as you get the opportunity to digest it. I've left my card in that folder for you. Please call me, email me with whatever questions you have. I will gladly answer anything and everything. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Burkrow, I just would like to say thank you for the presentation. And I think you've cleared up a lot of issues with not only me, other people too, as to jail operations and justifying why we need to expand the jail. So I want to thank you very much. Any other comments?
No, it was very informative and very easier to digest all that
I
information.
appreciate the paper copy. It's easier on the eyes.
Well,
The little things.
yes, I was thinking it's way too much information to digest in less than 45 minutes.
Never too much, never too much.
Like,
Thank you
if
very
need
much.
anything more, let me know. Thank you.
Mr. Ford, did you have a comment at all with?
No, Mr. Chair, not till later on in the agenda.
Okay, all right. So we'll move on to the Highway Department, Mr. West.
Chairman Ross, members of the board. I have some items on the agenda that I was at a conference most of last week, so I was unable to get anything scanned in. So I have one minor request and the rest will be informational because I respect the getting things submitted and what I have can wait. But I do have some handouts just to show a few things that just talked about and me. Okay, so the first item I have on the agenda is the Gilby shed. For the new commissioners, we have 9 auxiliary sheds throughout the county, one in each, basically each town, that we hold 1 or 2 motor graders, some plow trucks in the winter time that we can service our roads and get to them faster rather than mobilize the all from Grand Parks. we're in the process of updating one shed a year. We started a few years ago, a new one in Thompson. We remodeled Niagara, and we finished, or just in the process of finishing Inkster. Next one we were hoping to do was in Gilbert this year. And that, when I say remodel, like right now they're just cold storage closets. We insulate them, and heat them, put a small office in there and a bathroom. The goal to, number one, melt the plow equipment off in the winter, and then give that operator a bathroom. So they, bring in some plumbing and offer that still services. Back in September, we had obtained permission to purchase some land around the Gilby shed. The second page of the first handout would show what was the issue was. I had the property surveyed, and turned out about 6 feet of our shed was on the neighbor's property. So I approached the neighbor, and they said, yeah, absolutely, we'd sell you some land. And we showed about half an acre of property here. They wanted to sell us to give us some green space to park equipment, maybe store some gravel, whatnot. And they were willing to sell. It's $8,000 for half an acre. Of which Thursday I got the deed back on that. And if the board wanted to approve it, it's all it all lines up with what was approved in September. Same legal description, the pricing, it's just formalized here, but it's not in your packet. You haven't had a chance to review it, so, and it can wait. It's not a big deal. Let's throw that option out there. But the curveball, and why I even bring this up today without like formally asking for a request, is through this whole process, that landowner owns AquaGuard equipment. And it's an old John Deere dealership that they still do some repair work out of it, but they're not I don't know how to describe it, they buy their parts from another dealership and just do repair work. They have 3 employees, a couple of them are gonna retire. The owners have approached me about buying their property because they want to close it down in the near future. Last year, when we approached them about this land issue, they brought it up. I kind of dismissed it right away because I thought, that's way too much. We don't need all this building, and it's gonna be way too expensive. And my first thought is what the public's gonna think about us buying a business and closing it down, or losing jobs. Like, I just didn't think that would be good. Well, anyway, last week the president of the company comes in, signs the deed, and like, hey, you want to buy our property? I was like, no, not really, but well, how much, right? I mean, that's the question. Didn't throw out a price, but today we went and toured it, myself and our superintendent and the operator of Gilby. I mean, it's certainly more space than we would need to have. Of course, it's always nice to have more space, right? I mean, there's some cold storage sheds. The shed that's there already that's heated would be literally twice as big as our existing shed. And we could get some other equipment in there that currently sits outside. Some trailers or our excavator that sits out in the winter could go in this cold storage inside in the winter time that we usually wouldn't use it in the winter. The office space is certainly bigger than we would need. I don't know what we would do with it. The curveball here is probably the price of buying that property is going to be less than what we would stick in remodeling our building. I think we could get a bigger space at less price. They are committed to selling it to someone. They offered it to us first. Today, I said, well, if we're going to do this, we're going to need an appraisal. How do we establish some kind of a price? There's an assessed value on it. It appears low in my opinion, but so it's kind of here that maybe it would make more sense to buy a property that we could just move into, not do key work at a cheaper price than remodeling our existing shed. I don't know where it's going to go with, but just today she's going to order an appraisal and we'll see where that goes. I'm tempted to still ask for permission to write specs, do plans and specs, get a bid proposal ready. Because if this doesn't come to fruition, we need to move, right? I need to be bidding now so the contractors can go, we can get bids and do a project this summer.
The question, what would that do to the 6 feet that were over the line already?
Well,
We just walk away from it?
I think we would buy it still and we would own it.
But then we'd own the shed separately, and then we'd own the other property. Is that north of it?
Correct. Yeah, or that's up for debate. Maybe we don't buy it. I guess we haven't written the check yet. But it's still a precarious situation because our building is on somebody else's property. So I guess in my mind, regardless, if we stick with that shed, we should buy the property. If we buy the implement, maybe we sell our existing building with a new property we've acquired around it. So we don't want to sell a building that we don't own the land under. Up for
I'm
debate.
familiar with the surveys in our smaller towns since I live in one. So you never really know where the lines are until you need to know, and then you get this done.
Yes. So I just wanted to bring this to the board as an option. We're looking at and more information to come. And
Is that building ready to go, or does it also need work?
it would be ready to go. There would be some, I think some minor things would need to be done to it, like a new door put on it.
In-house stuff?
Correct. Yes, but functionally it's concrete floor drain, there's heat options. We could move in there today, it would function. They got a lot of stuff in there, a lot of parts.
Stuff you can use.
We can't really use it, it's agricultural parts. They would need to clean it out. And they're not looking to make a change. They mentioned the end of 24. So there's a time period laid here.
So then we switch your focus to another community's shed.
Well, maybe. Yes.
What was
Which,
the question?
I asked him if they say 2024 for this property in Gilby, if then for this year, if they would shift their focus to, because he said he was trying to do one a year. If then that focus would get moved to another location where they.
our current schedule would be Gilby this year, Northwood next year, Manville the following year. Curveball is I know Manville's ready to go. We've done some prep work on it through the previous years. It had some issues, like we replaced some walls. We've brought in the sewer and water already. That one I know is ready to go. The one in Northwood has, I fear, some land issues as well as Gilby. And my goal was this summer to research that and
Not a surprise.
yeah. I was gonna research that before I came to the board with a recommendation and so I wouldn't have time to do Northwood, so we'd probably skip that one until we can research that and figure out what's going on. And if we didn't do Gilby this year, I would jump to Manville.
So are you suggesting that we approve the purchase of the extra 6 feet for $8,000, but and give you permission to build on that with your normal schedule, or would you rather, are you gonna pretty well jump to Manville if this comes through?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Ing and Mr. West, we have not had a meeting to approve the capital improvements for 2023. So although that is your request, they have not approved it, and I would ask that you wouldn't do that until you consider all the projects.
Correct.
When should we do that next meeting, you think, or
I'm
when?
gonna talk about that at the report.
Yeah.
When we're gonna do that next.
All right, we'll wait.
The purchasing of the half an acre around our existing shed for $8,000 was approved back in September.
Yeah.
Um,
Remember that, yeah.
Yeah, me too.
In my opinion, I would move forward with that. That would clean up that property, whether we keep it or sell it.
Yeah, okay.
It would be a good property then to do whatever we want with in the future. This whole a la carte implement thing is kind of a big fish. I don't know where it's gonna go.
Well, we need to see where the appraisal goes.
Exactly. I wouldn't do anything without that and coming back to the board and having a discussion. But I would like to get permission in the meantime, assuming we don't buy Avangard, to start putting it bids, I guess is the bottom line, is to get the bids. Those would come back to the board before any money was spent anyway, and it's worth even doing those.
I'll make that motion.
And that would be that we could reject any and all bids if we decide to go to the Avangard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, does that motion include buying that to $8,000?
Yes, sir. Sorry, I didn't.
Dollars for it?
I thought we already did that.
No.
No,
We
okay.
talked about it.
September.
So you want me to restate
Have
it?
you run that by the state's attorney's office with that deed? I get nervous when I just hear deeds have been prepared and they're floating around.
Yes, Ms. Wamsit has reviewed it. The deed itself could wait if you would like. It doesn't have to be, because you haven't seen it. It'd be appropriate if it was scanned in part of the meeting packet. That part itself could be done.
Okay.
And just getting permission to start putting the proposal together for the bid package would be all in. And in the meantime, if we figure out we're gonna buy the Avangard implement, then we just drop it. Yeah. that's how it's done.
Chairman, Commissioner Rusted, what was the motion to purchase the additional land under the Gilby shed?
To move forward.
The $8,000 price
To start the bidding process.
Bidding
and
process.
start the bidding.
Sorry, I should have made that more clear.
Yeah. Is there a second to that motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll second that motion.
Yeah. Commissioner Hagan beat you.
No problem.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion? To start the bidding process on the Gilby shed, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
Motion's carried.
Thank you.
That's one more thing about that project.
Absolutely.
Did they give you a time frame on appraisal?
Not yet.
Sometimes those commercial appraisals are sort of a pain to get back in a timely fashion. I know you've got a sense of urgency, being that, well, next meeting's gonna be almost March, right? So, who's calling for it, you know?
The seller is. The seller was gonna obtain that, whether we buy it or not, they wanted an appraisal on the property.
You know, if they've done it yet.
No, I know they have it. They literally, I gave them names of appraisers today. So I'll be in contact with her on the schedule and.
It'd be good to know that stuff. Hopefully it doesn't come up your sequence of events, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yes, that's an issue.
Okay,
Next item, last meeting I was here and we temporarily approved some 5 concrete box culverts. And at that meeting, I mentioned that, you know, I think they're frankly, they're overpriced and it takes a long time to get. So I was gonna look at different options and I have done some of that. And I looked at getting, you know, instead of a double box culvert, we put in 6 big round culverts. Well, they're a hair cheaper and a hair more available, but not worth switching to. The next option I looked at was aluminum box culverts. And while Grand Forks County has never built an aluminum box culvert, oh, and here's just some pictures for you in your handout of what they look like. To my knowledge, we don't have any in Grand Forks County. We do have some aluminum culverts, but not the box culvert scenario. However, they're not new to the industry. 6-7 years ago, I priced them out and they were the exact same price as concrete. And in my mind, if they're the same price, we're going to go concrete because we feel it's have a longer lifespan. However, in this case, I don't think the lifespan is worth the price because I did get some quotes and I didn't share them because I got a quote from one manufacturer and it's still over the bid threshold. And so if we go to this option, we still have to do a public bid. And in fairness to the whole bidding process, I mean, I have them in the email, somebody asked, I'd have to supply them, but voluntarily just throw it out there. But they are a half to a third the price of material only. half to a third the price of concrete. I think given the price differential, it's something we should seriously consider. And I would actually recommend we go that route. Oh, and their availability is 6 to 8 weeks. So very reasonable timeframe. One of the biggest things is while they are made down in way down south somewhere, they can be shipped on 1 or 2 semi loads versus a box culvert is 15 or 20 loads.
Question?
Go ahead.
You said materials only. Your guys wouldn't be building these, would they? So when you factor in labor, where are we?
I don't know, Commissioner Ingen. We've never done that, and there's only been a few done in the state.
Okay.
And so the installation is quite different. Well, number one, you don't need a big crane, so you save a lot of money that way. Because they come in pieces like a jigsaw puzzle, and you bolt them all together. Thousands of bolts get put together. And so it's labor that you pick them up and you put the piece in place, and one guy holds it, and another guy puts the bolts in and zip them together. So a little more labor intensive that way, but the backfill around them is much more critical to have a good compaction around. That's where the strength comes from. On a concrete culvert, the strength of the culvert is the culvert itself, and the backfill around it is technically doesn't provide any support. Where on these metal ones, having good compaction on the granular soil around it keeps it from, I was gonna say, smushing down and squashing out. You need that gravel. So it's a little different installation, but certainly doable. I mean, none of this scares me at all. Be a little bit of a learning curve with contractors, but certainly my recommendation is to ask for permission to get bids on these. Then I come back.
Well, with the installation, because do they install?
No, they don't. So we could do it all as typically when we procure the box culverts or the concrete world, we would have a bid for the material, and then we would bid installation separate. Biggest reason is the monthly sales tax, because we're buying the product, so we automatically save that. If a contractor buys it, it's a sales tax. And then it allows us some flexibility in the material procurement. We can control a little more. Could go either way.
That'd be the same sales tax the county tried to pass last time around. I had to, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Couldn't resist.
we pay ourselves. Yeah.
What are you asking for? For us to do?
Permission to get bids on these.
Need a motion for that?
Yep.
Can you just,
Yes. So do I have a motion then to proceed with the bids on these aluminum culverts?
Absolutely. So
Okay. Commissioner Rusted makes the motion. Commissioner Hagan second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried.
Thank you. The next two items are informational. I think it was also in the packet here, but back October 19th, 2021, we had a discussion here about potentially paving County Road 25, which would be the back page of this map here, which is right next to the Reynolds Beat Piler, along with Trail County. The cost would be split on the line. And the talk at that time, a couple of years ago, was as well, hey, if we ever got Prairie Dog, then we would consider putting some of that money toward this road and splitting the Trail County. I know it's on Trail County's agenda for the February 7th, or excuse me, March 7th meeting. It's on their next meeting agenda. And it would require approval of both counties to authorize this to get it to work. So I just want to put that back out there that request might be coming. I guess hypothetically, if Trail County says no, then it's a new point for us.
I've had trail commissioners call me on this one. And they want it really bad. So I would imagine it will go through.
Well, there's mixed feelings. I'll just say that. Yeah, there's mixed feelings there. But,
Who beats the white line?
yeah. Well, it actually Grand Forks, we would be the one maintaining it, and that's our segment of road permanently to maintain, but yes, so and that would be, I would propose we would use part of our prairie dog funds for that, and I'm still working on exactly our recommendations on where that money would go. This would be part of it. The other one that might be part of it is, and I was hoping to have estimates and maps and stuff put together, was County Road 12 up by Northwood. Pretty rough shape. It'd be nice to do an overlay on it. It's a non-federal aid route, meaning we can't take our federal aid money and pay them. And then there's 1 mile on 17 between Grand Forks and Thompson. It'd be nice to do an overlay on. And the rest of prairie dog money would be culverts and bridges. And I'm working on that list, but that is all I have for a formal request.
Well, we'll wait to see what Trail County does on
Yeah,
25.
I think so. Monday, February 27th is the county township meeting. That is, we have 41 townships in the county, and at least 3 supervisors and a clerk treasurer. So we have just about all each county department head give an update to all the township supervisors and clerks and treasurers and learn more, and you all be invited, I believe. I don't know, they got a hold of.
I think Dave Ingen's on the agenda, so.
Okay.
And that would be one. You're the chair.
I know, but they've got you on the agenda.
That's interesting.
Both on the agenda.
I'll be there one way or another.
Okay. So
It's a good meeting, so you guys haven't been there maybe, but it's a good chance to see how all the townships work together, and now and then they heckle Nick, and it's entertaining.
Mr. Chair, I will be there as well.
Thank you. Mr. Beach.
that's all I have.
Thank you. Finance and Tax Director.
Chairman, members of the commission, I have the 2022 financial report. On the screen, I have the general fund departments and line items all listed, and we'll go through all of them. The Grand Forks Human Service Zone is about 10,000 under. That's the indirect cost that we pay, is that we are required to pay for the Human Service Zone. The liability insurance, service agreements, IT support, mailing costs, telephone, office supplies, vehicle maintenance, furniture and equipment. We are required to pay all those, and we paid $79,852.74 interest. We received $581,000 in revenue from the state for indirect costs. In the past, 20 years earlier, we charged them rent to be in our building, and it's just under $300,000 for that rent that we charge. So we are still ahead with the cost that we have to pay compared to the revenue that we're receiving from the state. The county fair, we allocated the same percentage that we receive in property tax revenue. And it used to be its own levy. Now it's part of the general fund. So that we have allocated in the same manner as we did in the past. The insurance reserve increased up to $634,000 for 2022. We have in 2023 budget, we have 620,000. So still under what we are being charged. We have additional property covered and we have increased the amount that we covered, our coverages too. Advertising, our minutes, and our agenda is what that mostly is. An average cost for our minutes is $272. All those bills that we pay, and we must include that in our bills that we print in the paper. Correctional center under $1 million, but their budgeted revenues were also under 400,000. So Net effect 600,000 under. Mostly because of salaries and benefits, they can't stay fully staffed. Board of Commissioners, they were under 13,800. Your travel was under 8,200. Human Resources was under 15,000. Professional Services was under 10,750. And Education and Training was under 2,400. Director of Administration is under 42,000. Base retention was under almost 20,000. And Grants Guide was under 4,800. And health insurance was also under 12,300. They had a new employee in that office, and we have to budget, assuming that they're going to take full family health insurance. So that's why they were under there. District Juvenile Court, they were under 3417, but they had purchases made with the Buildings and Grounds purchasing card in December that was paid in January. So they would like to apply that amount to the 22. They want to apply the money they spent in 2022 and paid for in 2023. So we don't affect 2023 at all. I would request that a budget amendment of $2,760 be made to allow them to spend that in 2023. So if we could have a motion to approve a budget amendment for district court to spend, amend their 2023 budget by $2,760.
I have a motion.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, I would make that motion.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, Commissioner Peach makes the motion. Commissioner Rusted does the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign, motion's carried.
Thank you, and I know they appreciate that. Sexually dangerous was under $18,000. It's hard to predict what that's going to be each year. Finance and tax, my department was under almost $50,000. 40 of that was from salaries and benefits and due to being short one person since September in my office. State's attorney was under 252,000. 211 or almost $212,000 was from salaries and benefits. The victim's witness fees, we received $25,000 from the court. The court charges a $25 fee as part of a sentence imposed on anyone convicted of a criminal offense. The fees are deposited with the county by the court. The fees must be allocated to one or more programs listed in the North Dakota Century Code. The county allocates the funds to CBIC for victims and witness advocacy. The recorder was under $8,394. And they only pay their salaries and benefits with the general fund $70. Everything else in their office, including office supplies, dues, travel, mailing costs, etc., comes from the tech fund. And the tech fund, it comes from a $3 fee that is added to every document that is recorded, and the refunds that we'll talk about later in the agenda from the North Dakota Recorders Information Network. The balance in that tech fund is $117,000 at the end of the year. Superintendent of schools salary, Steve Swantek is our superintendent of schools. He is paid about $530 a month. He's responsible to compile reports, assist school districts if requested, involved in annexations and reorganizations of school districts within Grand Forks County. And that's what they do. The tax equalization was under $15,000. Computer or the information technology budget was under $17,000, and that was salaries and benefits again. Employee benefits was under $2,800. Employee benefits is fees charged by the insurance center, our insurance broker. And the Live Well Solutions, the EAP program, the Employee Assistance Program, comes out of there along with law enforcement physicals. Buildings and grounds is under 48,000, 31,000 from salaries and benefits. But they also have janitorial fees, service agreements, we're also under. Elections, we're under 71,000. PSAP. The county agrees to the budget amount and we pay it quarterly. The amount that is in the 2023 budget is $322,000. PSAP costs are prorated based on the overall 5-year average number of calls received from Grand Forks County. The city, UND, and the county pay a share of the PSAP budget. County memberships. We pay for the North Dakota Association of Counties, the National Association of Counties, and the Grand Forks Chamber of Commerce. That's what comes out of there. Contracted services, I think you're all aware of the different funds that we give. I have a contract with the Grand Forks Community and Service, Grand Forks Humane Society, Safe Kids, Youth Works, Child Advocacy Center, CVIC, Detox Center, and Young Professionals. So those are all our contracted services. Utilities, we were over $35,000. Fuel, gas, and electricity costs have increased. Conference rooms. So these 3 conference rooms and the kitchen, we were $985 under. It's for the repairs, kitchen supplies, janitorial supplies, furniture, and equipment. And the Veteran Service Office takes care of these rooms. Capital improvements. We were under by $1,286, but this is only because we have $663,217 remaining on our 22 approved capital projects will be paid in 2023. So I'm going to show you that list. And there it is. So we have $1 million in our 2023 budget. And the next list there, that $663,217, those are all projects that were approved at in 2022 or earlier. So those, if we don't make a motion to take the funds that we had in 2022 and move it to 2023, they will come out of the $1 million and we won't have much left in our capital improvements budget. So what I'm requesting is that a motion be made to amend the 2023 capital improvements budget by $664,000 for the capital improvement projects that were approved in prior years and will be paid in 2023.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move that we amend the 2023 budget to cover the $664,000 from prior years.
Okay, do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Hagan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried.
Thank you. Sheriff's Department, they were over $104,000, but this is offset by $164,000 in revenue from grants they received. Juvenile detention was under $93,000. Salaries and benefits were under about $30,000 after deducting the consulting fee that they had in their department. They were also under service agreements, were under food and groceries were under, the risk budget was under, and performance-based standards were under, and attendant care was under. I think we were not doing that currently. So
Can you change the screen?
I'll get back to where I was. Mental health was under $30,000. Again, that's hard to say when we're going to need the money. Some years we're over. The coroner was over about $7,000. Emergency management was under $86,000. $32,000 was from salaries and benefits. They are short a person there as well. They're also under their software, $26,000. Travel was under $3,900 and $3,000 under on equipment. Planning and zoning was under $22,261. That was $10,000 for code enforcement, $4,000 for travel, and $3,000 for per diem. Miscellaneous was over $400,000. Why was that? We paid for the Witt property in December, and that was $413,000, which will be reimbursed this year. County reserve, no revenue or expenses. We do not. We have about $1 million that we received from estates. When people died, they didn't have a will, and they were from Grand Forks County prior to 2004. I think the law changed in 2004. We would receive the money. We don't anymore, but we have the money. And it's sitting there. It's in our general
Whoever
fund.
Didn't have any
It's-
relatives.
Right, both,
Had to be the second one too. Yeah.
right.
Jeez.
Right. The Grand Forks Narcotics Task Force. Now, everything I list after miscellaneous are things that we keep track separately. So we have a separate fund, although the law changed now as part of the general fund. We hold that money. So, for instance, the Grand Forks Narcotics Task Force money collected in 2022. We collected $22,275, and there's a balance in that account of about $37,000. All expenses in this account must be approved by the state forfeiture board, or not the state, by the asset forfeiture. And on that board is the state's attorney, the sheriff, Commissioner Rusted, and myself. So we keep track of that money separately. And then the victim reparation program, $202 was spent in 2022, and the balance is just under $10,000. Parking ramp maintenance was about 26.5 under. The year-end cash balance is $274,000. We add an average of $21,000 a year from the money that we collect, less the expenses that we pay. The asset forfeiture has $8,000 was transferred to the state's attorney's overtime line item in 2022, and the cash balance is $218,000 in that line item. The Grand Forks County Social Services, now the Human Service Zone, has a client opportunity line item that someone donated money, and they use that donated money to help out clients that don't have money for different things, and there's no way to fund it otherwise. So they have that fund, and we keep track of that separately. And they spent about $13,000 in 2022, and there's $84,000 remaining in that account. The County Recorder Tech Fund, $79,000 in expenses, and their balance is $117,000 at the end of 2022. The Hazard Chemical Prep. Now, this is something that's done by the Emergency Management Office. Anybody that has hazard chemicals has to apply with them or pay a fee, an annual fee of $25. They have $25,000 or just over $25,000 in that line item. Contract leasing. The Sheriff's Department's deputies are contracted out and different entities pay. So this is always zero. Whatever expense we have is offset by the revenue we receive. Total expenditures of $23.5 million, or 89% of our budgeted expenditures. You see that at the bottom of that sheet I have in front of you on the screen. The general cash balance, I'm going to switch over to this other sheet here that shows you the cash balance. of 18,000 or 18 million in the general fund. So that 18 million includes $2.6 million that we collect in December as for our 2023 budget. So we have to subtract that off to see what we have left. So if we subtract off that 2.6, we're down to 15.3. There, what we talked about, all those line items in the general fund that we set that money aside, that's $488,000. If we subtract that off, we're down to 14.8 million. And then we use $4.5 million of our general fund dollars for our 2023 budget. And then you just made motions for that capital improvements to that budget amendment.
Yeah.
That's 600. Yep, plus the budget amendment we made for the court. That would bring us down to 9.7 million. So we have $9.7 million in our general fund, which is good. 40% of our expenditures. We have a lot of things to spend the money on. We have a lot of things that you could spend that money on. State revenue was, our state aid was over about $1 million. Prisoner board, we talked about earlier, was under 324,000. Interest income was about $250,000 over. And we also have, which is not listed here, is $1.6 million in CARES dollars, which could be used for the dome project or the parking ramp project or the salary. There's a lot of things you could use it for, but $1.6 million is sitting there. The CARES, that was prior to ARPA. We got CARES dollars from the federal government to the state to the county based on the payroll for the sheriff's department. Is how we got the money.
And we still have that 3 million, right, for the ARPA money too, right?
Well, we put all the rest of the ARPA money towards the correctional center.
No, but that 3.
Well, that $3 million. Yes, we do have that $3 million. We never did give that. Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
so
that'll
with
be,
that CARES money, we could almost do that, don't we? So.
yep. So road and bridge, culverts were over $100,000. The Northwood Bridge was over $360,000. And there were other items that were under, so they used about $117,000 in their cash carried forward to balance their budget. Highway, gas and oil purchases that were over $250,000. Culverts were over $207,000. Parts and repairs were over about $70,000, and then we had to pay for the bridge load rate study, $281,000. So they used about $770,000 in cash carry forward, but they have a cash balance of about $1 million from that. The number that you see on the screen, 1.5. You have to take off 2023 money that we received in 2022. They also have House Bill 1505. So they got $3 million for state road and bridge projects. They've spent about half of that. They got half of it. Capital and construction, cash balance of 36 million. We have the correctional center bond sinking fund of 3.6 or almost 3.7 million, and our remaining balance of 32.5. Lead control 175.9, and their cash balance is 44% of their expenditures. And all the remaining ones is other than the Benjamin Service and Emergency Fund. We collect the money and we send the money out. So whatever we collect, we send out. Are there any questions? All right, that's all I have.
We need a motion to approve that. Okay.
You don't.
Any questions from anybody on the report? Sounds like we're not doing as bad as I thought. All right. Director of Administration.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Commission. Just really quick, I want to apologize to the board in advance. If you see me rush out before the meeting's over, I'm due to visit with the Grand Forks Builders and Traders Exchange later on. So, but starting with with Icon Juvenile Detention Center bid package. So you should have received bids from Icon and Construction Engineers, and looking for permission from the board to advertise those bids for, they would contain the site development and the structure package. So upon commission approval, those RFPs will be advertised out in the Grand Forks Herald and wherever else Icon and Construction Engineers advertise those, so that we can start entertaining bids from contractors and get the project.
Okay. Do I have a motion to do that?
So moved.
Okay, a motion by Commissioner Peach, by a second. Second by Commissioner Egan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried.
Okay, the next is just for your information. The county had applied for the courthouse safety improvement grant earlier this fall. And we were awarded that full request from the state. So if you remember, this is to fund the sheriff's security station at the main entrance to the courthouse, improve safety. The grant is $173,686.25. And then the county is obligated to fund 25% of the total project. So that would be $57,928.75 for capital improvement. So moving forward with JLG on the project, and hopefully get some bids out for that and get that started as well.
Okay.
Courthouse dome repair, I'm gonna probably have to bounce off of the state's attorney a little bit on this one, but the commission had decided to move forward with Miller Dunwoody's recommendations on refurbishing and repairing the courthouse. The next step in doing that is the commission does need to select a delivery system before we can start moving forward. Really, it comes down to design, bid, build, or construction manager at risk. Commission decision. I know Ms. Wong said there was a couple of factors that we need to address with construction manager at risk.
Thank you, Mr. Ford, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Regardless of the delivery system that's used, the North Dakota Century Code requires the board make some determinations in determining whether you wish to utilize an agency construction manager or a construction manager at risk. There's 3 determinations the board needs to make. First, that it is in the best interest of the public to utilize either the agency construction manager or construction manager at risk delivery method. Second, that the agency construction manager or the construction manager at risk planning and design phase services will not duplicate services normally provided by an architect or engineer. And the third determination is that the agency construction manager or the construction manager at risk construction services will be in addition to and not to duplicate the services provided for in the architect or engineer contracts. I would request that these determinations be made by form of motion so that it can be reflected in the minutes. If there is a request from an individual, we need to provide written documentation of these determinations. So the best way to do so, and I think how we've done it in the past, is to have it reflected in the minutes.
Comments from anybody?
This is as an FYI to the board for the Juvenile Detention Center and correctional center expansion, the commission did use construction manager at risk, just for reference. And essentially, through the bidding process, the county elects a representative through design, through construction, through bidding. And so it puts it all, encompasses on the one firm through the bidding process.
Have a motion for anybody want to?
Trying to figure out one question. In the design bid build, that's a situation where the owner has to have qualified people to make the decisions along the way, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Ing, and that's correct. So essentially, the county would act as the project manager and individually bid design, individually bid contractors, subcontractors.
I'm just thinking that in this dome project, we need a construction manager at risk to quarterback this, but that's my opinion.
And to expand on that, Commissioner Ingen, it's going to need to be someone with historical preservation experience and knowledge. And also just to, when the commission elects a delivery system and we put out an RFP package, I know visiting with Ms. Wamstead, there's specific federal guidelines we're going to have to include in the bidding because we're using ARPA funds.
I think the motion to go with the construction manager at risk.
I'll second. That's a motion by Commissioner Egan, second by Commissioner Rusted to approve construction risk. Manager at risk. Yeah. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item, Mr. Gashesky's on. Yes.
Apologies. Sorry to interject. The factors that I previously discussed, we need a motion for them as well.
I would move approval of that, Mr. Chair.
Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Egan.
I was saying something else. That's fine.
Okay.
Close to you.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion is carried.
Jay, thank you, Ms. Wamstead, for the reminder. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the next item is snow removal equipment procurement. Mr. Gashesky is on leave. So I'll take this one. Mr. Gashesky and myself met with Commissioner Rusted and Commissioner Ross a couple of weeks ago. Really, it comes down to snow removal and mitigating some risk, mitigating some cost factors. I won't go through everything that was in your packets, but essentially, the snow delivery, we've been contracting that out through public bidding for some time. We're having growing concerns of response, hauling away, risk that is putting on the county. And so Mr. Gashesky had presented the idea of bringing snow removal in-house. And so he put together essentially the narrative that you all saw, and then Ms. Nelson ran the numbers. There's about, when you factor it out over 2018 to 2022 on average snow removal costs, and then you look at what it would cost for procurement and another staff member, it does equate to be about $7,600 more to go in-house. However, that being said, Ms. Nelson had made a good point that we're going to, if this isn't the route, the in-house route that the commission would like to go, I highly recommend we rebid snow removal services. It's very difficult to predict the expenses of farming that out. We just don't know what that'll be based on the winter. So there's no guarantee it's a cost saving. There's no guarantee it's going to cost more or less. So keep that in mind when we're factoring in the overall numbers. What it does do, though, is it would make county facility staff, they could better respond for blizzards, snow events, icy ramps, icy sidewalks, getting the snow out of fire lanes so that we're not getting warnings from the fire marshals. It would make it much more responsive, so it would cut down on risk. It would mitigate the liability, better service and better response, our facilities. And there would be some equipment sharing between buildings and grounds and the highway department as well. Mr. Yashewski would need to do this. Mr. Yashewski would need another maintenance technician. It is worth noting that once the juvenile detention center and the jail addition are complete, he's going to need another maintenance technician anyways. So that's the proposal on the table. Commission decision to go this in-house route. We would need permission to begin procuring the equipment. If not, we'll just rebid for snow removal equipment.
I think this,
Thank you, Ms. Nelson, for making sense of what didn't look like it made sense at all earlier on. It looked like it would be way too expensive to do it that way. In reality, maybe not so much. I don't know.
well, Mr. Rusted, you have a comment?
Yeah, I guess I like it. I like the idea. Is the other thing that we can't predict, even when we rebid it out, is what's the cost gonna be, even if we stop with the same vendor. I can't recall off the top of my head who that is, but so I mean, we might see a savings a lot quicker than we think. Or worst case scenario, it costs us a little more. It might drop. You know, so how we guys want to do it?
Okay, do we need to send this to administrative services first?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, no, you don't.
Okay,
You could approve it right here, but I should have done something during my report, and I know that Mr. Ford needs to get going, but I needed to ask you to set a public safety and infrastructure committee meeting so we can discuss the 2023 capital improvements. So I was going to request that you do that at the next meeting. But I know Commissioner Peach, she has another meeting at 3 o'clock right before the next meeting. So I don't know if you want to do it at 2 o'clock that day or pick a different day or
2 o'clock and prior to our next commission meeting.
21st of
I
February.
like that. If Commissioner Peach can go from one meeting to the next, that.
Meeting is at 2. The meeting starts at 2 and goes usually until about 3:45. So we'd have to start at 1.
So do you want to pick a different day? Do you want to wait till March 7th, the commission meeting? Or do you want to pick a non-commission meeting day?
How about 1 o'clock that day? It's just, that's so many trips into Grand Forks, but
1 o'clock on the
that's
21st?
Commissioner Peach, how about 1 o'clock that day?
Yes, that would be fine as long as we're done within an hour.
Is that good with you, Commissioner Rusted?
Looking at it right now, but then so I don't forget.
I'm not sure yet, it might be soon, but.
Okay,
And at that time, if you wanted to take action today, we could, you would actually be approving equipment prior to that meeting.
can it wait till the next meeting?
I think so.
Yeah,
Wake up February 21st.
so that'll be 1 o'clock then. Huh?
yeah.
I mean, unless Ms. Nelson isn't finished, I apologize. The
I
only
got-
to-year question, Chairman Rost, on admin services, and I've discussed this with Ms. Thiel's aware, so is Commissioner Rusted. For this to work, we will have to take a look at the buildings and grounds manager job description and some duties, but the timing's perfect because human resources is doing all of those by the commission's direction anyways. So, but there'll have to be some further conversations there.
Okay,
So,
all right.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Okay.
that's eight then. All right.
The last thing I have, it really is in conjunction to Mr. Burkholder's presentation earlier, and it was a excellent presentation. I think cleared up a lot of misunderstandings, but you noticed a lot of different emails going around lately, and they're in your packets. So some legislators have come forward. They have some concerns with some of the comments made during the December 22nd special commission meeting where the commission decided on how to fund some of the bigger projects moving forward. And so when Ms. Leon and I were out in Bismarck testifying on a bill, we wound up meeting with a few legislators, North Dakota Association of County Reps and DOCR reps. And the concern comes to statements, comments about the state not meeting their obligations on reimbursing the county with inmates. I went back and I watched that video a few times, and I genuinely believe just some misunderstandings and miscommunications were had. I don't think there was any intent of anyone to make false accusations, but I did want to bring this up so the commission is aware. But the legislators felt that some of the comments were they were not accurate in terms of the state reimbursing the counties. I think it was a misunderstanding. I think there were differences between prisoner prioritization plan, when reimbursements kick in versus during the height of COVID and the pen was shut down versus gavel to travel. And what went in confusion of when the counties are reimbursed, when they're not. So I did promise these legislators that we would address this in today's commission meeting. Some of the other concerns were the ARPA funds being dedicated to completing the jail expansion project of $5 million, making sure that there was clarity on how the prisoner prioritization plan works. Mr. Burkholder did that. Prisoner transportation, we've discussed that. Mr. Burkholder, he's already addressed that. So I think it's just important that the commission is aware that these concerns are out there. There's also, I've seen some community comments out there also that the county was misleading the community and prisoner population and prioritization. Again, Mr. Burkholder did a great job addressing that, but just wanted to throw it out there for any discussion or any feedback to me that I can take back in conversations. But those concerns have been aired out of the county. So with that, I'll quit rambling.
Any comments from anybody?
I assume that Mr. Burkholder's presentation today could be available to them or has been available to the legislators already.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Ingen, if there's any request for that, we'll make sure it's available.
I think Mr. Burkholder sent out quite a lengthy deal to the senators, so. Okay. All right, moving along. State's attorney.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I have no update today.
Okay. Committee reports. We'll start with you, Commissioner Peach.
I have nothing to share today. Thank you.
Commissioner Rusted.
And deal is moving forward. Bridge studies, I'm sure. I was entirely surprised to hear that. They talked about what they present here. Assumption they met today, but must not have access to the agenda and openings here. So,
Okay.
that's about it.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I could clarify that.
Yeah.
Commissioner Rusted's correct that originally the city was planning to be on the agenda, but then they decided to delay that and probably next meeting, if not the meeting after that.
All right. Commissioner Hagan.
Don't really have much more to update than the last time I was here with the library board. Giving Hearts Day, they are looking to purchase a van to get out into the county more, to do activities and book readings and things like that. Last year, over 9,000 titles were added to the public library, which is kind of cool. And they did start, it's called the CARE catalog. It's for people in our community that might not have access to toiletry and hygiene items, and they can come in and take those items as they need. So, other than that, anything else?
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hagan.
Administrative Services Committee meeting, which we were all in attendance at, so that's my report. Not long.
Yeah, that's about all I have too, so. All right. Unfinished new business.
Comment on this section. There's been quite a bit of discussion about salary studies. Yeah, trying to get the county where it ought to be. And I know that Bob and I, at least I believe, I can't speak for you, sir, but I believe we share the sentiment that there's one department that really isn't in need of a study, because it's simple as calling the neighboring counties and to figure out what they're starting their deputies at. And to me, that's like the missing tooth in the county, is that these guys are the same, guys and girls, my apologies, have the same qualifications as the people across the street and are substantially paid differently. And so, I mean, it's obviously not on the agenda, and this meeting's already run long, so I'm not gonna blather on. But maybe for next week, we could really dive into the following meeting, we could dive into this a little bit if it would be all right with everybody else.
Yeah, I think we would almost have to have a different committee talk about salaries. I don't know that, doesn't that need to come up in the administrative services?
Well, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, if Ms. Nelson and Longstead would concur, I would say that's the right place to start. Have that conversation.
Yep. So we'll look at trying to set something up, Commissioner Rusted, because I agree with you. It's like I fought that for 40 years. And
we've always
Andy's
done that.
fighting it now, so yeah, we
We
need
talk about it every year, and it's always a tight budget, and we got the correctional center who's got also the
same issues. Yeah.
They're trying to keep staff in a dangerous profession, and we need to focus on it somehow.
Yeah.
What I'd hate to see is a mass exodus.
What?
We'd hate to have a mass exodus of deputies.
Yeah.
Because, financial stability in this current economy is going to wind up being a larger factor with every passing day. And so, these are the people that start sinking out to be a priority of ours.
I know that's one of the reasons why a lot of people have lots of human service zones. They'll go to other locating county or around surrounding counties, excuse me, because they can do the same job and make more money. And now we're understaffed.
Yeah.
Well, I think it even extends to the state's attorney's office.
Yeah.
The state's attorneys, assistant state's attorneys, stay around very long either. They get some good training, do some trial work, and off they go. So we've got a county-wide kind of problem with salaries, so we've got to try to figure out how to fix it. I agree with everything that's been said.
Yeah. So we'll try and set something up where we can meet with Michelle, HR, and see what we can do. I totally agree with the people that are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, holidays, weekends. It's crazy. They're under a lot of stress, and not only the sheriff's office, but the jail, and Haley Wamsted's attorneys. They're 24/7. Somebody's gonna call in a search warrant at 2 a.m. And so, I mean, I know what they go through. I mean, these jobs are not 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and they're hazardous jobs, and I think they need to be dealt with. So,
I agree.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rusted, for bringing that up. Okay. Correspondence.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, the last three items are just informational to show you what we received from North Dakota Recorders Information Network. Thank you from the Greater Grand Forks Community Service, and what we got from the National Opioid Settlement. We've received $73,000 so far,
Okay.
and we spent $12,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Oh, do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second, Mr. Hagan.
Really
All
don't
right.
You're faster than.
See this big water jug that I carry?